From the moment the train started, my childhood sweetheart gave me the silent treatment, while he chatted away enthusiastically with the girl sitting across from us. Shawn had a smile playing on his lips, and the girl's gaze grew softer. Suddenly, she looked at me with curiosity and a hint of hesitation. "Excuse me for asking, are you two a couple?" I was about to answer when Shawn cut in, his smile disappearing. "No." I paused, then quietly echoed, "No." This winter vacation trip started with a cold war between my childhood sweetheart and me the second we boarded the train. I leaned against the window, with him to my left. We were as distant as if the other was invisible, not even a fleeting glance exchanged. Until, halfway through the journey, a tall, fashionable girl boarded the train. She immediately caught the attention of many passengers. She wore a long, pure white down jacket, open to reveal a black bodysuit that clung to her figure, accentuating her curves. But her face was gentle and refined. Her makeup was impeccable, giving her an innocent yet alluring vibe that made her instantly likable. She pushed a small suitcase, her eyes scanning the carriage. When she spotted us, her eyes lit up. She sat down in the empty seat across from us, patting her chest. "Phew, finally found a seat, I'm exhausted." Shawn immediately stood up, polite and gentlemanly. "Let me help you with your luggage." The girl quickly refused. "No need to trouble you, handsome, I can do it myself, it's not heavy." But in trying to take the suitcase, she accidentally brushed Shawn's hand. Her face flushed, and she stammered, "Thank you." Shawn, who had been cold the entire trip, smiled slightly. "You're welcome. I noticed you're traveling alone, it's not easy for a girl to travel by herself. Just lending a hand." Hearing this, my heart stung slightly. When I was struggling with my suitcase, he didn't offer to lend a hand. After she sat down, they started chatting, exchanging names. I learned the girl's name was Lena. They seemed to hit it off instantly, talking more and more animatedly. Like two flies buzzing incessantly, disturbing the peace in my heart and provoking me. Shawn's indifference towards me earlier was in stark contrast to his enthusiasm towards Lena. Shawn's smile never faded, and Lena's gaze towards him became increasingly ambiguous. I grew increasingly agitated, wanting to excuse myself to go to the restroom to get away, but I couldn't find a chance to interrupt. Lena suddenly looked at me, asking with curiosity and a hint of hesitation, "Excuse me for asking, are you two a couple?" Finally, I wasn't invisible? I was about to answer when Shawn cut in, his smile disappearing. "No." I paused, then quietly echoed, "No." Shawn was probably surprised that I agreed with him, and he faltered as well. This was the first time I had denied our relationship. His expression turned colder. "Quinn." He emphasized my name, seeming displeased with my answer, but he didn't say anything else. Why did he assume that only he could deny our relationship as childhood sweethearts with an arranged marriage? He felt that this relationship constrained him, but it also constrained me. From birth, I was labeled as his future wife. I had loved him with all my heart, but he had gradually trampled that love into the mud. This relationship was already dead in name only. I looked up at him. "What do you want me to say?" His deep, handsome eyes studied me intently, a hint of mockery in the corner of his lips. He said casually, "Whatever you want. I hope that's what you truly feel, and not just you being sulky." My breath caught in my throat. I wasn't sulky before, but now I was. He continued, "After all, I only see you as a little sister." My emotions surged, and I felt a sense of powerlessness. "Okay, big brother, say no more." Snapping out of it, I caught a glimpse of the joy in Lena's eyes. "I see, they've got the hots for each other, and I'm in the way." "Forget it, I can't be bothered to explain." Shawn didn't know that I had already decided to stop liking him. I took a deep breath. "Excuse me, I'm going to the restroom." He scoffed. He stood up and let me pass. My mother and Shawn's mother were best friends. They even gave birth on the same day, Shawn being only 20 minutes older than me. We were betrothed at birth, not just verbally, but actually written down on red paper with our birth dates, formalizing the engagement. Both our families were wealthy, and our businesses occasionally intertwined, so the marriage could be considered a good match. The adults didn't hide the arranged marriage from us. Shawn's family instilled in him the idea of spoiling, loving, taking care of, and being good to me. Shawn did just that. When he was younger, Shawn was particularly possessive, especially fond of me, cherishing me like the apple of his eye. He'd give me anything I wanted, even his own lucky charm. He spoiled me rotten. And my heart and eyes were only for him, I was committed to him. As he grew up, he became more and more dazzling. With his privileged background, outstanding looks, his circle of friends began to expand. I felt like I couldn't squeeze in. I tried to join his circle, but I was always teased. "Shawn, your little wifey is here again. We agreed no family members allowed. You're already controlling her before marriage, if you get married, will she even have any rights?" I threw a few tantrums, and he looked at me with disappointment. Quinn, I have my own social circle, don't be so unreasonable. Was I being unreasonable? What kind of people were those friends of his? The things they did were so scandalous. Whenever I felt wronged, I would go home and cry. Every time I cried, Shawn would be dragged by Auntie Jo to apologize to me. And he would coax me until I was happy again. I don't know when it started, but all I saw in his eyes was impatience, not me. His rebellious phase, though late, had arrived. He began to hate that marriage contract. And he began to dislike me. I didn't care. The business dealings between our two families had become inseparable, and this marriage had even become our responsibility. He could only marry me. Until he secretly had a girlfriend in his freshman year. I caught them kissing under the Christmas tree. Shawn shielded her in his arms, telling me firmly, I love her. I became hysterical, rushing up and slapping them both, threatening to make that girl's life miserable. Somehow, the Shao family found out about this, and he was forced to break up with her. That girl was also forced to go abroad. Shawn searched everywhere and begged everyone, but he couldn't find her. I was consumed with jealousy, realizing that's how he looked when he loved someone. I thought he would go crazy, but to my surprise, he calmly said to me, I will marry you, take care of you for the rest of my life, but I will never love you. The crimson in his eyes sent a shiver down my spine. Even so, I was still a fool, still liked him, and even hoped that he could love me unconditionally. He wasn't just my youth, liking him was a habit that had woven itself into my life. But I never expected that this habit would become the sharpest knife in his hand. A knife used to hurt me. No one knew how many unwarranted accusations I had to endure under his pretense of being considerate and obedient to me. His revenge was like a needle in my skin, leaving no visible marks but causing excruciating pain. Gradually, I stopped liking him so much. Our relationship was like a crumpled piece of paper. Although everyone was trying to smooth it out, it could never return to its original state. He had changed. And so should I. I had planned this winter vacation trip for a long time, originally with my mother. But somehow, he became my travel companion. It wasn't hard to guess that it was another plan concocted by our matchmaking mothers. They still hoped that we could go back to the way we were. We were childhood sweethearts, a handsome couple, and a good match in every way. Wasn't this destiny? As Zixia Fairy said, heaven's arrangement is the biggest. If I could, I would also hope to spend my life with him. After 20 years of companionship, I couldn't tell whether my feelings for Shawn were love or habit. In any case, cutting him out of my life would undoubtedly feel like ripping my flesh apart. But Shawn? He probably thought that I had used some trick to force him to accompany me. Before getting on the train, I still had a glimmer of hope. Maybe something would change during this trip. From the moment we left, Shawn had been complaining. Complaining about why I suddenly wanted to go to Tibet, a journey of over 3,000 kilometers, and by train. Finally, after getting on the train and finding our seats, Shawn began to complain again. Quinn, we have to sit on the train for more than 30 hours, do you know how tiring that is? I frowned. But the scenery along this route is the most beautiful. That's just your opinion. I just want to sleep well at home during my vacation. Can you not drag me into your affairs every time? I'm always the one making concessions. He added. Even with my good temper, I was annoyed by his constant complaints. I said coldly, you can still get off the train. Humph, if I get off, I don't know how you'll complain to my mother behind my back. After saying that, he ignored me, extremely indifferent. He didn't even help me with my luggage. Worried that I wouldn't like the food during the trip, I brought a lot of snacks. The suitcase was heavy, and I tried several times to lift it, but I couldn't. I stood helplessly in the middle of the aisle, getting pushed around by passing travelers. Looking at Shawn, who was unmoved and sitting like an old monk, I suddenly hated him. I felt wronged and wanted to cry again, but I stubbornly held back. He wanted me to cry. I didn't want to cry in front of him. I resolutely didn't ask for his help. It was the middle-aged uncle across from us who helped me put it up. We stopped talking and began our Cold War. When I came back, Lena was sitting in my seat, sharing my headphones with Shawn, talking and laughing. When Lena saw me, she said sweetly, Sister, I feel a little stuffy in my chest. Can I switch seats with you to sit by the window? I stared intently at the headphones, a surge of rage rising within me. Get up. If you feel stuffy, don't wear such tight clothes. And don't call me that. I'm an only child, I don't have any sisters. Shawn scolded in a low voice, Quinn, where's your manners? My manners? She was already sitting there, and she's still asking if it's okay, does she have manners? I especially hated people touching my things without my permission. I said angrily, give it back. Perhaps my expression was too frightening, Lena looked embarrassed. She stood up. Never mind if you don't want to switch. I'm talking about the headphones. Shawn frowned. Quinn, don't be childish, I gave them to her. I laughed in anger. What right do you have to give my headphones to her? The argument here attracted several curious gazes. Shawn, who always cared about his image, put the headphones in their case with a dark face and threw them at me. Would you die if she used them for a bit? You are so dramatic. Just then, a sanitation worker came by to collect trash. I threw the headphones directly into the trash bag. I wouldn't die, I just think they're dirty. Lena exclaimed softly, a hint of regret flashing in her eyes, then her eyes welled up with tears. If you think they're dirty, I can help you disinfect them, you don't have to throw them away. Shawn frowned even more. Quinn, apologize. People around us whispered, vaguely hearing a few phrases, what a temper, so stingy. A chill wrapped around me, and my heart began to ache again. Here it comes again, his usual tactic. Even though I was used to it, it still hurt so much. I was really fed up, I hated him. I raised my voice. You sat in my seat without my permission, and you used my headphones without my permission, and you want me to apologize? I said I would only switch for a while, we can switch back at the next stop, right? We were at a standoff. Knowing she was in the wrong, Lena said, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have sat here, and I shouldn't have used Quinn's headphones, I'll go back to my seat now. Don't argue because of me. Shawn pulled Lena back into her seat. You don't have to go, I want to see if she absolutely has to sit next to me. I looked at Shawn deeply. Idiot. How could someone be so self-assured? How little did he care about me, that he couldn't even distinguish what I hated and cared about. I turned around and found a member of the train staff, saying that my seat was occupied and I couldn't communicate with them. When the train staff came with me, Shawn looked at me as if he was seeing me for the first time. This time, it wasn't me who was crying. Lena reluctantly sat back down, leaning on the small table and crying. Crying so hard it broke people's hearts. I was disgusted, it was my seat to begin with, yet she was acting all wronged. It wasn't like I was the only one sitting by the window, wasn't the old man next to her also by the window, why didn't she switch with him? She just wanted to make me uncomfortable. This trip was a complete disaster. But there was worse to come. Shawn never disappointed when it came to belittling me. He whispered to Lena to comfort her. I'm sorry, she has a bad temper. If you like those headphones, I'll buy you a new pair. If you want to sit by the window, go around the carriage and ask if anyone is willing to switch. I'll pay for it. Lena looked up, her eyes wet, making her look all the more pitiable. No need, Shawn, you're so kind. Shawn affectionately ruffled her hair. Don't cry, I'll get you whatever you want. I can fulfill any wish of yours. Lena's nose turned pink, and she glanced at me secretly. Really? This scene made me feel physically uncomfortable. In an instant, the filter over Shawn seemed to shatter. As if in a daze, Lena was soothed by him. He didn't forget to spread the love. Quinn, what else can you do besides complaining? I wanted to slap him again. You're so disappointing. It was simply absurd. I couldn't help retorting, how you feel is none of my business. But you've reminded me, I should tell Auntie Jo how well you've been taking care of me along the way. Don't you agree, brother? Shawn's face froze. The train happened to be pulling into a station, with a 5-minute stop. I got off the train to get some fresh air. As soon as I stepped off, a gust of cold air hit me in the face, and I instinctively hugged myself. A jacket was draped over my shoulders. It was Shawn who had followed me out. I wrapped the jacket around me and turned to meet his eyes. Even without the rosy filter of love, I still had to admit that his features were exceptionally attractive. He cared for me very naturally. Why did you get off the train without a jacket? It's cold outside, don't catch a cold. Although he spoke words of concern, I could clearly see the indifference in his eyes. He wasn't hiding it anymore, or rather, he never had. This was his so-called care. How much had I been deceiving myself before? It was time to wake up. I gave a miserable smile. Shawn, have you really never loved me? Perhaps my expression was too vulnerable, and a hint of struggle flashed in his eyes. After a few seconds of silence, he replied, I used to like you. Quinn, we're too familiar. Being with you every day doesn't give me any excitement. Holding your hand is like holding my own left hand. We're more like family. The thought of marrying you and sleeping with you feels like incest. It doesn't arouse any interest. Haha, incest? Haven't you ever kissed me? Tears streamed down my face as I laughed. The scalding tears turned cold as soon as they flowed out. I was young and didn't know better back then. I blurted out, does Lena give you excitement? Or does she look a little like Lucy? Shawn's expression changed, and he grabbed my shoulders forcefully. Quinn, you have no right to mention her. The pain in my shoulders was excruciating, and I gasped. I gritted my teeth. Shawn, I never told my family about Lucy. He said with red eyes, it's been so long, and you're still trying to justify yourself. You're the only one who knew about me and her. I shook him off. Believe it or not, it's up to you. It didn't matter anymore anyway. The train attendant began urging the people who were smoking to hurry up, as the train was about to depart. As Shawn was about to get on the train, I stopped him. Let's break off the engagement. He turned around quickly, his voice urgent. Are you serious? Yes. But I have a request. He wore an, of course, expression, annoyed. Speak. I looked at the distant snow-capped mountains and exhaled. I spent a lot of time planning this trip. Let's just treat it as our farewell trip. Before we break off the engagement, I want that 18-year-old Shawn to be with me. Can you let him come back to my side temporarily? His thin lips were pressed together tightly, and a few strands of hair fell on his forehead, accentuating the depth of his eyes. He stared straight at me without saying a word, with an unfathomable look in his eyes, as if trying to see through me. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a touch of pure white at the door of the train carriage, a bright smile on her face. Now, can he give me a hug? He was slightly moved and suddenly pulled me into his arms. Quinn, even if I don't marry you, I will still take care of you for the rest of my life. In his arms, I felt calm to the point of indifference. He was right, people who were too familiar would never get a racing heart no matter how tightly they hugged. Even, disgusted. His care? I couldn't bear to receive it. I just didn't want my carefully planned trip to be ruined by him. This was also my farewell gift to my first 20 years. It had nothing to do with him. Back on the train, Shawn's attitude changed completely. He was solicitous and caring. Lena tried to start conversations with him several times, but he seemed not to hear her. I smiled sarcastically. In order to please me, he could even maintain his distance from other women. Shawn handed me a freshly peeled apple. Quinn, we're almost there. Are you tired? Do you want me to massage your legs? Lena bit her lower lip, her eyes full of jealousy. I took a bite of the apple. Sure, my legs are so swollen. Shawn naturally picked up my legs, placed them on his lap, and gently massaged them. Lena leaned back on her seat angrily. Finally, it was quiet. When we were about to reach our final destination, Shawn went to the restroom. Lena kicked me under the table. What is your relationship with Shawn? I kicked her back. None of your business. She suddenly stood up and leaned close to me. Don't think that you can stick to him just because you have some looks. I don't care what your relationship is, but I've taken a liking to him, so you better get lost. I looked at her amusedly. You just happened to sit on the same train, and you've already taken a liking to him? Are you attracted to his face, or to the Patek Philippe on his wrist? Lena didn't deny it. So what? I had overestimated her a little. We're brother and sister. She sat back down, satisfied. That's for the best. You just wait and see, you'll be calling me sister-in-law soon enough. By the way, even if you're just his sister, I don't like it when you're too close to him. I choked a bit. Why were they all so self-assured? Lena believed it, it seemed that we really didn't look like a couple at all. Finally, we arrived at our final destination, Les As. As soon as I got off the train, I felt the unique atmosphere of the Highlands. Looking up, the sky was as blue as a sapphire, and the white clouds seemed within reach. The Potala Palace was not far away. The Tibetans wore colorful ethnic costumes, as if they were chanting sutras, their expressions devout and focused. My heart immediately felt at peace. Let's call a cab to go to the hotel first, I feel so smelly. Okay. Lena suddenly appeared from nowhere. Quinn, can I join you? Shawn told me you've done a lot of research, unlike me, who got a sudden urge and just took off on a whim. I don't even know which way to go after getting off the train. Please, take pity on me and take me with you. She seemed to be begging me, but she was really just playing the victim. Such a green TB*TCH. As expected, Shawn spoke up. Quinn, how about we? Before he could finish, I took the suitcase from his hand and walked away. Why should I take her with me when I did the research? Quinn, it's dangerous for a girl to be alone, don't you have any sympathy? I stopped and gave him a quick, light glance, but my tone was heavy. Shawn, do you remember the point of this trip? His eyes flickered, and he smiled helplessly. I thought you were joking. What, are you jealous? Just then, the cab arrived, and he pushed me into the car. It's up to you, then we won't take her. Lena tried to squeeze in, but Shawn refused. I'm sorry, Lena, Quinn would be upset. Lena's expression changed. The driver asked in broken Mandarin, are you getting in or not? Shawn closed the car door. Let's go, she's not going the same way as us. The DD driver made a U-turn, and I saw Lena's distorted face and chuckled. Shawn suddenly flicked my nose. Are you satisfied now? We were both stunned. When we got to the hotel, it was originally one room, but I changed it to 2 adjoining rooms. Shawn helped me put my luggage in first. You must be tired after such a long ride. Take a hot bath and get a good night's sleep, and you'll feel better when you go out to play. I'm right next door, so call me if you need anything. I nodded. Okay. He smiled. Good girl. He really seemed to have turned into the 18-year-old Shawn, and I greedily looked at his face. Finally, I looked away. He also looked a little awkward. Then I'll go now. By the way, do you want me to call you for dinner? I said sullenly, no need, I brought a lot of pre-made meals. I'll get up and eat whenever I wake up. He stood up and turned around. Just as he was about to reach the door, the figure in my eyes became increasingly blurred, as if it was about to disappear. Subconsciously, I called out, Shawn. He turned around, with the familiar smile on his face. What's wrong, Quinn? Do you want me to stay here with you? My eyes felt a little dry, and I lowered my head in a panic. You're tired too, take a pre-made meal with you. He walked over and gave me a light hug. Okay. I soaked in the bathtub, crying silently. The 18-year-old Shawn, it had been so long. I don't know how long I soaked, the water was a little cold, I shivered and climbed out, took another shower, and fell asleep. I was awakened by the pain. I don't know how long I had slept, my whole body ached, my eyelids couldn't open, and my throat was dry and sore. I raised my hand and touched my forehead, it was burning hot. Damn it, I had a fever. My whole body was weak, and I didn't even have the strength to pour myself a glass of water. Dizzily, I fumbled for my phone and called Shawn. The phone rang until it automatically hung up, but he didn't answer. I made a few more calls, but he didn't answer any of them. Helpless, I had to force myself up and drink some water. My symptoms seemed like the flu. I looked at the time, it was not yet 12 o'clock. I decided to call Shawn to take me to the hospital. I tentatively made a few more calls, but still no one answered. Could he be sleeping too soundly? Dragging my aching body, I knocked on his door, hoarsely calling out, Shawn, open the door. Who is it, knocking on the door in the middle of the night, how annoying. The door opened. Shawn was only wearing a jacket, when he saw it was me, he looked flustered. Under the jacket was a naked upper body, with a string of ambiguous red marks on his collarbone. Quinn, what are you doing here? With a bang, something exploded in my brain. I immediately became a lot more alert. I said angrily, who are you in there with? He stood in front of me. No one. The white down jacket was lying on the floor, I had already seen it. It's Lena, isn't it? Shawn, who is it? Lena walked over, wearing a bathrobe and covering her chest. Her hair was messy, and the skin that was exposed was bruised and purple. Seeing me, she covered her mouth in surprise. Quinn, you're so clueless, what are you doing knocking on Shawn's door in the middle of the night? I ignored her and stared at Shawn. I called you more than 10 times, didn't you hear me? He said with a dark face. My phone was on silent. Shawn, aren't you ashamed? I'm right next door. Quinn, we didn't do anything. I took a deep breath and slapped Shawn in the face. The engagement hasn't been broken off yet, and you can't wait that long? Lena said in surprise. What engagement? Aren't you his sister? I slapped her in the face again. You believe anything you're told, you idiot, sleeping with someone after knowing them for only a short time, aren't you cheap? Lena screamed. How dare you hit me? You're the cheap one. Shawn stopped her but pushed me. Quinn, that's enough. I fell softly to the ground and didn't know anything. When I woke up again, I was in the hospital. Shawn was by the bedside, playing with his phone boredly. You're awake, why didn't you say you were sick earlier? I turned my head and didn't want to look at him. You can leave, we're completely over. Quinn, listen to my explanation, Lena took the initiative. He was putting the blame on Lena again. What a spineless man. Does she know which hotel you're staying at? Does she know your room number? Shawn, you're such a coward. You know you're engaged, but you don't dare to actively propose breaking it off. Lucy was sent abroad, could you not afford a plane ticket? You don't dare to resist your parents, because you know you're nothing without everything your parents provide. You only know how to put the blame on me, as if punishing me can show your loyalty and integrity. Lena is interested in you, but you let her into your room, and then blame her for being proactive. You're just a spineless Shawn. You don't deserve to be loved. I said everything calmly. He suddenly laughed. Yes, I'm just trash. Quinn, what makes you think you're so noble? Haven't you also loved this trash for 20 years? The taste of unrequited love must be terrible, right? I was the one who told Lena my location, she's so horny, if you hadn't knocked on the door, I would have slept with her immediately. I grabbed the water glass from the bedside table and threw it at him, roaring, get out of here. He rubbed his forehead, laughing even more maliciously. I don't need to prove whether I can perform to you. I really don't have any interest in you. Also, remember to go back and break off the engagement. Perhaps it was just like the old saying. Forced melons are not sweet. I should have known long ago that unsweetened melons are just inferior products, and should not be allowed on the market. They should just be thrown into the trash can. To rot, to fester. Unrecyclable. A strange city, a strange hospital. Shawn just left and never came back. I ordered a bowl of nutritious porridge from the hospital, but it tasted terrible. I ate it while crying. This trip was really, really terrible. I wanted to go home. I didn't dare to call my mother. I was afraid she would worry. Even more, I was afraid she would be sad. She and Auntie Jo were as close as sisters, and loved everything related to her, treating Shawn as half a son. If she knew that Shawn treated me like this, I was afraid she wouldn't be able to bear it. I dialed my father's number. "Dad, I'm sick, and I'm alone in the hospital. Can you come pick me up?" My father asked me a lot of questions anxiously, and finally said, "Where's Shawn? I want to break off the engagement with him." There was a silence on the other end, and then his tone suddenly became light. "Honey, are you sure?" "I'm sure." Every father hates the pig who takes his own cabbage, and my father was no exception. He didn't like Shawn, and thought he was irresponsible. But the cabbage liked the pig, and there was nothing he could do. After hanging up, my father told me that a friend's son was in Lhasa, and he would have him come over to take care of me for a few days. And send me back after I recovered. 2 hours later, several men in army coats came to my hospital room. The one in the lead was particularly eye-catching. Tall and straight, with broad shoulders and a narrow waist, the same army coat looked like he was a warlord from the Republican era who stirred up trouble. I was stunned. "Who are you?" The man in the lead walked up to my bed in a few steps, his voice deep and steady. "Hello, Comrade Quinn. My name is Hugh Guan, and I was entrusted by your father to come and see you." As soon as he finished speaking, the men behind him quickly put the fruits and gifts they were holding in the corner, taking quick glances at me but then looking straight ahead. But their eyes were full of gossipy light, making it seem like I was having an affair with Hugh Guan. I didn't dare to look directly at Hugh Guan's sharpness, and said in a low voice, "Oh, okay, thank you for your trouble." He chuckled and then put on a stern face and said to the soldiers, "You can go now." The men were a little unwilling, but retreated smoothly. Only Hugh Guan and I were left in the room. His presence was so strong that I felt a little nervous. I was about to say something. A large hand touched my forehead, slightly cool. "The fever has gone down." When I sat in Hugh Guan's living room, I was still a little dazed. After taking me for a follow-up visit and confirming that I just needed to rest well for a few days and take my medicine on time, Hugh Guan took me home. A one-bedroom apartment, clean and tidy. I sat stiffly on the sofa. Hugh Guan walked over and squatted in front of me, his tall body level with me. "You don't need to feel pressured. I'm mostly not at home and rarely come back. Just stay here in peace." His strong masculine aura was overwhelming, and my face felt a little hot. "Thank you." He smiled slightly, like melting snow mountains. "Quinn, don't you remember me?" I was a little surprised, opened my mouth slightly, and shook my head. How could I not remember such a high-quality man if I had met him? He said helplessly, "We used to play together when we were kids, but I moved away later." The sofa sank a little, and he sat down to my left. "You used to call me Silent Gord when you were little." I tried hard to remember, and finally remembered that when I was a child, there were 7 or 8 kids in the compound, and one of them was particularly unsociable, and we all called him Silent Gord. "Do you remember now?" I nodded. He asked again, "Then do you remember playing the wedding game when we were kids?" How could I not remember? When we played the wedding game when we were kids, everyone knew that Shawn and I had an arranged marriage, and Shawn was always the groom, and I was the bride. My face looked a little ugly. "Childhood games don't count." Hugh Guan said as if casually, "What about him?" "Me, dead." A hand was held in the palm of a large hand. I stared at him wide-eyed, looking at him in confusion. Hugh Guan said slowly, "I take the game seriously. Shawn was always the one who played the groom when we were kids. Only once, he had diarrhea, and you couldn't find anyone, so you pulled me into play. When we were making our vows, someone said, 'The groom can kiss the bride now.'" I covered my face. I remembered. The wedding game ended after the vows, but only that time. There was an extra step where the groom kissed the bride. Although we were still young, we knew that we couldn't just kiss someone of the opposite sex. "I've seen my uncle get married, it doesn't count if you don't kiss." Then everyone booed, pushing us together for a kiss. My first kiss, was Hugh Guan? He pulled down my hand and looked at me intently. That was my first kiss. It was too embarrassing. When I came to my senses, I realized that I was already in his arms. How did I end up sitting in his arms? How could he be like this? He looked serious and cold, but how could he be so aggressive? My face was red, and I jumped out of his arms. "Are all soldiers like you, hugging girls as soon as they see them?" His face straightened, and he said seriously, "I've only hugged you, you're my wife." "Were soldiers that direct? Do you know that I have an engagement with Shawn?" He looked at me and gave a strange smile. "It's about to be broken off, isn't it?" Had my father told him all this? He looked a little nervous and took a breath. I went back to see you every year, but you didn't know. You like plum blossoms. The plum blossoms on the dead tree outside your window were made by me with wax. I was really surprised. The plum blossoms were lifelike, and I would take a lot of photos every year. I always thought they were made by the gardener. Quinn, I've been waiting for you for a long time. Surrounded by his strong pheromones, my head was in a mess. Huguan launched another attack. He doesn't know how to cherish you, let me cherish you instead. Are you willing to be with me? It was quiet all around, and all I could hear was his deafening confession. He stood straight in front of me, his eyes turned into endless gentle whirlpools, as if to suck my whole person in. I was like prey locked in place by his gaze, with nowhere to escape. His eyes turned red, revealing the turbulent emotions in his heart. I couldn't resist. I'm still. Facing his firm gaze, I flinched and swallowed the words that had come to my mouth. I swallowed my saliva. Then, shall we try? I spent a few days with Huguan. In those days, I understood what it felt like to be cherished. The way he looked at me was so intense that it seemed to melt me. Afraid of scaring me, he restrained himself and didn't touch me again. I tried to understand him and became more and more attuned to him. The Tibet trip didn't go according to my plans after all. Huguan and I walked through every corner of the Padala Palace together and even filmed a "pulling up radishes on dry land" video together. It was time to go home. Huguan had originally planned to send me personally, but because of something, he could only send me to the train station. At parting, he couldn't help but hug me tightly. His hot body embraced me, reluctant to let go. Quinn, I really can't bear to let you go. I stood on tiptoe and gave him a kiss on the chin. I'll wait for you to come back for the new year. The next second, he lifted his army coat to block other people's view, lowered his head and covered my lips, his tongue domineeringly breaking into my mouth and plundering my breath. His whole body stiffened, almost snapping my waist. After the kiss, he leaned into my neck and gasped. Okay, wait for me. I saw beautiful scenery all the way, and my heart was especially full. Back home, my mother hugged me. Honey, why didn't Shawn come back with you? How did he take care of you? You've lost weight after going out for a few days. Hearing Shawn's name, I was startled. Shawn hadn't contacted me even once after he left. And I hadn't thought of him either. Thinking of Huguan, my heart stirred. Mom, I want to break off the engagement with Shawn. That rotten piece of meat that was Shawn, it was time to cut it off. I told her everything that happened on the way, and my mother was trembling with anger. She took my hand and was about to go to the Shawn family. Break it off, we must break it off immediately. I pulled her back. Mom, where's that engagement? I was talking about that red paper. She slapped her forehead. Oh, right, I'll go get it now. After a while, she handed me a box. I opened it and saw a shredded piece of red paper inside. My mother said embarrassedly, when you were in school, a girl came to me and said she was Shawn's girlfriend. I took the engagement to Zhou Hongdan, and tore it up in a fit of anger. It was your Auntie Zhou who said to give him another chance, so I put it back in. I was a little surprised. Was it Lucy? She had taken the initiative to reveal it herself. I was a little puzzled. My mother continued, I went to school to see you a few times, and she probably thought I was Shawn's mother. That girl was very smart, and knew that there would be no result between her and Shawn, so she asked for a sum of money. My eyes turned red. I didn't know what curse Lucy had cast on him. He was unwilling to believe his parents, but blamed everything on me. Using my affection for him to give me the cold shoulder. I whimpered, Mom, I thought you wouldn't agree to break off the engagement. She hugged me distressfully. Silly child, watch less short plays, your brain is broken. Although Mom didn't treat that stinky boy as an outsider, he did wrong, and we can't be wronged. Breaking off the engagement went smoothly. Auntie Zhou knew about the bastard things Shawn had done, and without saying a word, tore her copy in half. She also had people bring Shawn back from the bar. He was drunk, and when he saw me and my mother sitting on the sofa, he sneered. Did you call me back to apologize again? Quinn, would you die if you didn't complain? My mother was so angry that she wanted to curse. Auntie Zhou moved quickly and slapped him in the face. You bastard, Quinn is here to break off the engagement. After saying that, she gave him the box containing the red paper. Shawn woke up a lot at once. You really tore it up? He looked at me, as if to confirm something from my face. Quinn, playing hard to get? You're thinking too much. Shawn lost his composure. Are you serious? Quinn, give me back my long life lock. Shawn, do you have amnesia? You already took back the long life lock and gave it to Lucy. My mother couldn't bear it any longer and splashed tea on his face. Shawn, you've disappointed me too much. Quinn, let's go. I told Huguan the news of the broken engagement as soon as possible. His voice was low. Quinn, I will never let you down. Soon it was the 29th day of the 12th lunar month. I missed Huguan more and more. I didn't know what he was busy with, and we could only talk a few words a day. But every time we hung up, I would look forward to the next time. It was really very refreshing. In the blink of an eye, it was New Year's Eve, and I still hadn't received any news from Hugh Guan, and I was a little anxious. Even eating New Year's Eve dinner, I was a little listless. Mrs. Joe cleared her throat. Honey, an old classmate of mine suddenly contacted me and said that she has a son who is about the same age as you, and just graduated from Harvard, and looks like a top star. Do you want to meet him? Before I could speak, my father said nervously, spare me, just with your taste, our daughter is so excellent, she must have a better eye than you, let her find her own. I could tell that the Shawn family's kid was no good a long time ago, but you insisted on arguing with me. My mother pinched his ear. Chinji, I think your skin is itchy. Just then, the doorbell rang. My father took the opportunity to escape the clutches. I'll go open the door. As soon as he opened the door, Hugh Guan was covered in snow, carrying gift boxes in both hands. Uncle Chin, I'm here to propose marriage. My mother opened her mouth wide, and looked at Hugh Guan without blinking her eyes, and was immediately amazed. Good gracious, what did you say? Hugh Guan entered the house and glanced at me apologetically. He took a piece of scrap paper from his clothes and handed it to my mother. Auntie, I brought the marriage contract. Mrs. Joe's expressive face was colorful. Old Chin, what's going on? I was called into the room. I don't know how long the three of them talked outside. Hugh Guan knocked on my door. As soon as I opened it, he flashed into the room and pinned me against the door. A fiery kiss landed on my lips. Wife, I've missed you so much. I returned his kiss but was pulled away by him. Don't be impatient, your mother wants you to come out. I was so angry, he took the opportunity to kiss me just to deliver a message, and said I was impatient. It turned out that old Chin had confessed honestly. He loved to play chess, but he was a terrible chess player, and no one wanted to play chess with him, so he came up with the idea of playing with children. Hugh Guan was unsociable when he was a child, so my father pulled him to play chess. After teaching Hugh Guan, he lost every time. Even Hugh Guan was unwilling to play chess with him anymore. I found it hard to resist. Faced with his unwavering gaze, I shuddered and swallowed the words that had come to my mouth. I swallowed my saliva. Then, shall we try? During the few days I spent with Hugh Guan, I understood what it meant to be cherished. The way he looked at me was so intense that it seemed to melt me. Afraid of scaring me, he restrained himself and didn't touch me again. I tried to understand him and became more and more attuned to him. The trip to Tibet didn't go according to my plans after all. Hugh Guan and I walked through every corner of the Potala Palace together and even filmed a "pulling up radishes on dry land" video together. It was time to go home. Hugh Guan had originally planned to send me personally, but because of something, he could only send me to the train station. At parting, he couldn't help but hug me tightly. His hot body embraced me, reluctant to let go. Quinn, I really can't bear to let you go. I stood on tiptoe and gave him a kiss on the chin. I'll wait for you to come back for the new year. The next second, he lifted his army coat to block other people's view, lowered his head and covered my lips, his tongue domineeringly breaking into my mouth and plundering my breath. His whole body stiffened, almost snapping my waist. After the kiss, he leaned into my neck and gasped. Okay, wait for me. I had Shawn all of his contacts blocked after his tirade. I said to my friends who stood up for me that I didn't want anything to do with his shenanigans. I then had my wedding gown fitted and found what I wanted while ignoring the gossip around me. After this, do not tell me of his actions, I said to my friend. My friend said he would be lucky to have you and complained, what about your fiancé, why isn't he here with you? I smiled, and laughed at this question, not losing my focus. His occupation makes him difficult, his job is special. He wanted to attend but his work made it difficult. We made light of the situation and continued. Leaving the wedding shop, I heard a familiar voice call out, where do you think you are going? Why were you trying on a dress without me? I was shocked at first, but turned and my mouth dropped. I looked at the speaker. Shawn, what is your problem? Don't play dumb, you will marry me. My parents say so. My friend, knowing about the fallout, had enough. She pulled out the invite. See this? Read it and stay away from Quinn. You are crazy. Shawn could not believe what was going on and said, Hugh Guan, who is this? When the invitation was sent out in the circle, but not to Shawn, he snapped. He broke and went from girl to girl and would speak of us being together again soon. Soon after, he began drinking nightly, and was soon arrested and was booked for driving under the influence. These events, my friend said, are why he was not there as well. He then had her block him and said the words I used the day she said he was wrong. Before my engagement, Auntie Joe called me, Quinn, Auntie doesn't know what to do, Shawn is bleeding from his stomach, and he said he will die unless he sees you. Hugh Guan, having arrived, took my hand, go see what it is, I will attend to whatever he says. I asked him to come but he declined. I will wait in the lobby, go. You will be fine, you are a good man, I responded as I walked out. What am I missing here? I thought. Looking at Shawn, I jumped back. He lost so much weight and was looking at the ceiling. Seeing me, he sat up and said, Quinn, so you remember us. We need each other. My anger was getting to me. I responded to him coldly, Shawn, I am here for Auntie Jo, I have no interest. Hearing this, he was defeated. So it is over? After what we have been, you would leave? I responded sharply, you have a say in this? My voice quivered as I spoke. You do not get to say what happens. I make my choices. He looked defeated but replied, it has to be me. Sighing, I looked at him. Do not say things you don't mean, are you for real? He clutched his hand in anger, I was wrong to push you away, I deserve this. Can you find a way to forgive me? With this, I walked closer to the door, but then said, it is over, Shawn. I am tired, and I do not want to hear your voice again. I will marry the person I love. He is real, and he knows what he wants. Goodbye. It will never work with him, he is nothing, Shawn responded. I am better, just listen for a moment. The hatred I had for him came forward, I was the fool for waiting for you. I walked out of the room. As I left, I knew it was over. His words had no meaning anymore. Find someone new, Shawn, you are not it. I responded to him. After I walked out, Hugh grabbed me and began touching me. He kissed me over and over. He is over, you are safe. He shook, and said, I did not want you to leave. He said he was scared of the words in my head and that he would not let me leave. I began to hug him and replied, he is gone, and you are here. Then, I pulled his head up and gave him a long kiss. It was over. Hugh Guan, I love you. He smiled, and kissed my forehead, I will cherish every day, and make sure you never have a moment like this again. To my husband, to all our days. END.